Assalamu alaikum viewers, how are you? Hope you will be fine. Welcome to the channel Literature Outstanding. Be positive, be hopeful in your lives. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my lyre too for his civility. We passed the school where children stroll at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet, while shorter than the day, I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. This is the beautiful poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson that I have selected for the review in this video. On theme of death and immortality, it's one of the best poems in English literature and appreciated by readers and critics both. That's why I'm going to make it a part of my channel Literature Outstanding. Actually, Emily Dickinson, the famous American poetess, has treated death and immortality in a very different way in this poem that makes this poem unique and outstanding. Because I Could Not Stop for Death is a lyrical poem, and in this poem the poetess shares her personal experience or her personal encounter with death. So let's see what happens in this poem. In this video, first I will share the summary of this poem, and then there will be a short and brief review of this poem. So let's start the video, but before that, those who are new to this channel, if you have not subscribed the channel yet, please subscribe Literature Outstanding and hit the bell icon for future videos. You can also follow our Facebook page right here, and its link will be shared in description box. You will notice that I have used wedding images for this video while the theme of the poem is death and immortality. Then why I have done so? There are some reasons which I will share in a review session of this video. So if you are interested, you must watch the review of this poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death. In this poem, the poetess gives us an account of her last journey, the journey of her death. This poem is actually about the imaginary funeral procession of Poetess. Yes, Poetess is talking about her own imaginary funeral procession. And you will notice that the poetess is so bold and fearless in dealing the theme of death and immortality. But why the poetess is so bold and fearless in dealing the theme of death and immortality? Normally, human beings are afraid of death. So here I have collected some information about the background of this poem as well as the poetess, so you may understand this fearless behavior of poetess towards death in a better way. Actually, Emily Dickinson led an isolated and very restricted social life by her own choice. She belonged to an Orthodox family. She was a religious person who believed in the concept of life after death. So a religious person who is leading a pious life, doing good deeds, believing in mercy of God after death. So such kind of person is always fearless, bold in matter of death. Second, it is also said that Emily Dickinson's house was close to a cemetery or a graveyard, and you can imagine that when a person's house is close to a cemetery or graveyard, it means that that person is watching funerals on daily basis. So this could be a reason that she is using a funeral procession as a setting for this poem. Another important element which is very important to mention here is the years in which the poetess composed this poem. It is believed that the poetess composed this poem during 1855 to 1863, and these years were very important in her life in the sense that these were the years during which she had to face the death of some close relatives. And of course, the death of close ones always have an effect on human mind. It is also observed that in some cases, after losing some close one, people never remain afraid of graveyards, cemetery, and shamshans. In fact, they start to love that place because now their connection is not with the place. Their connection is with person who is in that graveyard. So maybe these were some elements that inspired the poetess when she was writing Because I Couldn't Stop for Death, and some other poems which she wrote on the theme of death and immortality. So after this information, let's see what happens with the poetess in this poem. The poetess tells us that one day when she was very busy in her worldly affairs or in her day-to-day affairs, death came to her in form of a suitor or a lover. It came to the poetess in a coach driven by horses, and his behavior was so polished, cultured, and civilized. Then the death requested the poetess to give him company, and the poetess was so impressed by his civility that she couldn't say no to him and left all her worldly tasks at once and sat in that coach with him without any fear and resistance. Their journey started, and the poetess was very comfortable in the company of death. On the other hand, death was also not in any hurry, and it was driving the coach very slowly. And then the poetess noticed that there was someone else in that coach, but who? And when she saw, it was immortality. And first time the poetess was little uncomfortable. Now the poetess was looking outside the coach, and she saw that their coach was passing near a school where children were busy in playing in recess time in a ring. And then they passed near the gazing grains or harvested fields. After that they passed near the setting sun. But then the poetess corrects herself by saying that maybe the setting sun passed them. Now there was no more sun. Dewdrops started to fall, and the poetess was feeling chill. She was quivering. She realized that her dress is so thin, just like a cow's. It's insufficient to save her from that intense cold. Then their carriage stopped near a swelling in ground, but the poetess was unable to understand what that place was. That place was little above the earth. It was very inside the earth. It had a cornice too. Its roof was not too high. Actually, it was the open grave which was waiting for its dead body. And when the poetess entered in that grave in company of death, she felt that all the sense of time and space disappeared. Because the poetess tells us that it has now been centuries, but she feels time here shorter than a day. The poetess felt that after entering into that grave, maybe she had entered into the realm of timelessness and immortality. And then she noticed that the head of horses of that carriage were also towards eternity. And here, as a reader, we realize that maybe the poetess is already dead, and whatever she is telling us, it was just the account of her last journey, her death journey, that she is sharing with us as a dead person in the world of immortality and timelessness. So it was the summary of the poem. Hope you like it. I know this poem is little ambiguous and tricky to understand, and sometimes it confuses the mind of a reader, especially the end of the poem. But in review session, I shall try to address all ambiguous points in the poem and try to remove all the confusions that arise in the mind of a simple reader like me. So let's start the review of this poem. In review, first I want to discuss the title of the poem. That is Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Actually, it's not the title of the poem given by the poetess, because Emily Dickinson usually never gave titles to her poems.
Even she gave no title to this poem, and the first line of the poem is used as title, because I could not stop for death. The theme of the poem is Death and Immortality. It was Emily Dickinson's favorite theme, as she wrote many poems on this theme. But Because I Could Not Stop for Death is one of her best poems on this theme. It's a deep, highly philosophical and thought-provoking poem saturated with symbols and hidden meanings. So let's try to decode those symbols and hidden meanings. In this poem, the life has been presented as a journey that starts with the birth of a person and that ends with the death of a person. Life is a continuous journey without any stop. But then there comes a point in the life of every human being where he has to stop his journey. We can call it death stop, because here death is waiting for us. He stops us and we have to stop there, because no one can say no to death. The first stanza of the poem, and especially two starting lines of the poem, describes this fact of life very realistically and ironically. After reading these lines, as a reader, we started to think that yes, one day we will also be busy just like the poetess in the attractiveness of this world or in the responsibilities of this world, and death will visit us and we have to leave this world, because it's death that will choose us. It's not us who will choose the death. That's why in these two lines the use of word stop is very meaningful, because even here death stops for the poetess. It's death that is choosing the poetess, otherwise poetess has no time to stop, no time to think about the death. And normally we all human beings are so much busy in our day-to-day life that we don't have time even to think about the death. But on the other side, irony of this situation or irony of life is that death has so much time for us. It's always with us, it's always chasing us, it's just waiting for the right appointed time. When that time will come, it will visit us and we have to leave this world without any excuse. In this poem, the death is visiting the poetess in form of a lover, suitor, a gentleman whose behavior is so cultured and polished. Here, Emily Dickinson makes herself different from other poets and writers, as in world of literature, death personifications and death characters are horrible type of characters who are holding some dangerous weapon in their hands, dragging people from this world. People are also afraid of them. Of course, there are a few exceptions in literature where death is presented beautifully and non-conventionally, but generally, death personifications are horrible type of characters. You can see Emily Dickinson is presenting the death in beautiful way, just like a groom is coming to receive his bride. That's why I'm also using wedding images for preparing this video. This non-conventional, fearless and bold treatment of death not only makes this poem appealing for a reader, but it also wins a high place for this poem in the world of literature. Another important and prominent feature of this poem is use of symbolism. Yes, when the poetess was sitting in the carriage in company of death, at that time their carriage passed near the school where children were busy in playing in recess time in a ring. And then their carriage passed near the harvested fields, and finally their carriage passed near the setting sun. But then the poetess corrects herself by saying that maybe the setting sun passed them. And yes, it seems the right statement, because whatever the poetess is telling us, she is telling us as a dead person. So how a dead person can pass near the setting sun? Of course, the setting sun will pass him or her. These images are very important in the poem because they symbolize the three important stages of human life. Children playing in the playground actually symbolize the childhood of a person. Harvested fields are a symbol of youth or prime time in a person's life, and setting sun is the symbol of old age, when the sun of a person's life is near to set. So these three images actually present the three important stages or three important phases in normal human life. These symbols also show the inevitability and unpredictability of life and death at the same time. We know that we have to die one day death will come to receive us. It's inevitable. But at which stage, at which point we have to leave this world, in our childhood, in our prime time, or in our old age? No one can tell this. It's unpredictable. It's a secret, and one day death will visit us and then it will reveal this secret to us. This unpredictability and inevitability of death has been described in different languages and different literatures, but here I can recall two most beautiful lines of a Sufi Punjabi poet Mian Muhammad Baksh Rahmatullah Alayhi's world famous book Saif al-Muluk, where he says that शाम होई हर कोई करा नु आवे शाम होई हर कोई करा नु आवे ओ ना आवे फिर मोहम्मद मौत जिनू ले जावे. It means that it's evening and everyone is returning to home except those taken by the death. In these lines, Sufi poet Hazrat Mian Muhammad Baksh Rahmatullah Alayh is accepting the inevitability of death in human beings' life. And Emily Dickinson is doing the same thing in her poem, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. We can say that the theme of death and immortality is a universal theme, and the credit goes to Emily Dickinson, who has handled and presented this theme very gracefully and beautifully at the same time. In this poem, the poetess also mentions the cold quivering drops of dew, which started to fall right after the sunset. Agnes was feeling so cold. These dew drops are actually a symbol of coldness of death, because death is mostly associated with coldness and chill. Of course, when a person is in company of death, he will feel chill, he will quiver, because it's death that deprives human body from warmth of life. At this point, the poetess also realized that the dress she was wearing, the gown, the veil, the headdress, whatever she was wearing was so thin, just like a gauze, that it was insufficient to save her from that intense cold. Here, the poetess also mentions a cloth, gossamer. It's a fabric that is used in Western countries for preparing bridal dresses. But here, poetess is wearing it as her shroud or as her death dress. Moreover, tippet, tulle, these all are part of a wedding dress. The similarities between the shroud and wedding dress, plus Emily Dickinson's personification of death as a lover suitor or as a gentleman, these are some points. No doubt they show Emily Dickinson's fearless attitude towards death, but at the same time, this attitude towards death is hard to digest for a normal reader and for some critics also. This attitude or this behavior never seems normal, but here we can easily find the elements of spirituality. Because when we read about spirituality or about spiritual personalities, santas, sadhu, yogi, Sufis, their behavior towards and their attitude towards death is also very frank and friendly type of. That's why spiritual personalities are not afraid of death, and for them death is a medium or source which can give them opportunity to meet their real master, real creator. For them, death is not the end, it's just the beginning of another life, another journey. Even nowadays, there are some people who keep their shroud or death dress or coffin in their wardrobe with their normal wear. Even I have read about some Sufis that during their life they used to sleep in their graves. Just like we sleep on our bed at night, they sleep in their graves. So it was their bold, fearless behavior towards death, and this frank and fearless behavior towards death is very normal in spiritual world. So if we will read the poem Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson in religious and spiritual context, then her fearless and bold attitude towards death seems very normal. So in spiritual context, her behavior towards death is very justified and accurate, and I've also come to know that Emily Dickinson was very fond of metaphysical poetry, and she was a great fan of John Donne and George Herbert's poetry, and these are two great metaphysical poets, we all know that. And the last theme which I want to discuss in this review is the theme of immortality and eternity. At the end of the poem, in last stanza, when the poetess enters into the grave in company of death, there she noticed that the sense of time actually has been changed there. She felt that grave was just like a portal through which she has entered into the world of immortality and eternity. The poetess tells us that in world of immortality and timelessness, the speed of time or sense of time was different than the speed and sense of time in this world. For example, when the poetess says that centuries have been passed, but it all seemed shorter than a day, it means that sense of time in two worlds is different. Actually, the concept of eternity and immortality is an abstract or ambiguous kind of concept. It's very difficult to explain in words. The concept of immortality and eternity, a place where there is no time, no space, or sense of timelessness. Actually, in religious context, it's very easy to explain. In religious context, death is not the end of life, it's just the beginning of another life. So this is an explanation from religious point of view. But there is another school of thought who never believes in eternity or in concept of timelessness. According to them, timelessness or eternity is nothing, it's just eternal nothingness of life or dark nothingness of death. So it's all up to our reader. I have presented both school of thoughts, and it's up to the reader what he wants to believe in. Actually, time, timelessness, no time, no space, eternity, immortality, these subjects are not only the most burning concepts in world of literature, but also in world of science. Is there any place in this world or in the universe where there is no time and no space? Or is there any place in this universe where sense of time, speed of time is different than the sense of speed of time in this world? Is there any place where immortality and eternity exist? Or it's just the name of a state of mind or just an experience which only and only our soul can experience? Because life is a journey of our body with soul, and death is a journey which only our soul experiences. These and many more questions arise in the mind of a reader, and especially in the mind of a modern reader who is living in this scientific age when we read this poem, because I could not stop for death. Science, modern physics, quantum theory is also addressing these questions and trying to find out the answers. Modern science and modern physics is talking about time travel. According to scientists, if we started to travel with the speed of light, the sense of time could be different in two different places. In very latest researches, even some rays have been discovered which speed is faster than the speed of light. So in future, if the man will be able to travel with the speed of light or faster than the speed of light, maybe the sense of time in two different places would be different, as the poetess is saying centuries have been passed on one place and on other place it's just shorter than a day. So only the time will solve this riddle and this mystery, and when the mysteries related to time will be solved, maybe some mysteries related to death will also be solved. And the last thing which I want to appreciate in this review is the diction of the poem. The poetess has used suitable and the most appropriate words for expression. We can find brevity in expression of the poetess, and even this poem can be explained word by word. And I will end my review by saying that Because I Could Not Stop for Death is one of the best poems in the world of literature on the theme of death and immortality. It's must read. Although the poem starts as a riddle, as a mystery, and remains a mystery till the end. And the reason of this ambiguity is the subject matter of the poem. Yes, death is a great mystery. Those who are alive, they don't have time even to think about death.
Or those who die, they never ever come back to tell us where they go and why they don't come back, what happened with them. So, how this mystery will be solved. Few poems, few pieces of literature, and few reviews are insufficient to solve this riddle. That's why I will also end my review here.
In the end, I just want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this effort, please share it to your friends and family. You can also leave some comment in comment section. And if you have not subscribed the channel yet, please subscribe Literature Outstanding and don't forget to hit the bell icon for future videos. You can also follow our Facebook page, A Writer, and its link will be shared in description box. Once again, thank you very much for watching. Allah Hafiz, be positive and be hopeful in your lives.